Welcome to our epic ocean, where critical solutions to a planet in peril are brought to the surface. Our epic ocean celebrates all that is epic about the ocean and why it is the planet's most vital resource. And now to our host, Rich Gurman.
Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. My guest today is the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization Kiss the Ground, whose ethos supports the vision of a thriving earth with healthy soil being the key to a flourishing food ecosystem. He co-directed the award-winning documentary May I Be Frank back in 2010, and in 2020, he produced the critically acclaimed and critically important Kiss the Ground film. Personally, I know Ryland through his family's Cafe Gratitude vegan restaurants, and the world now knows him and his team as global leaders in the regenerative agriculture movement. He's an entrepreneur, a champion of sacred commerce and community building, and a grateful father to his son Rumi, named after the Sufi poet who penned my opening words. Ryland Engelhart, welcome to our epic ocean. How are you, brother?
I am great and grateful and alive and well and feeling free in my heart and mind, which I'm grateful for because I've actually, in the last year, felt a lot of heaviness and a lot of contraction and fear and concern and overwhelm. And so I'm just grateful to be in that moment of, pulling that instrument off the shelf and, as you shared in the Rumi poem, allowing for life, words, song, energy, insight to come through me, and hope that it can be helpful and informative and inspiring for those listening. And so thanks for the opportunity, and
thank you.
Grateful to be here.
Grateful to have you, and let's hopefully make some music together. So there's so much that I want to talk to you about. But let's start with the most current focus, which is all things Kiss the Ground and regenerative agriculture and how it can help reverse climate change. So I want to begin with a basic question. What exactly is regenerative agriculture, and why is it so important in relation to climate change?
Great question. Yeah, so why is regenerative agriculture, what is it, and why is it so important in relationship to climate change? Well, my journey was really, as someone who'd been in, as you said, the organic food space, running restaurants, hospitality. I always knew that organic food was better. Organic farming was better for the environment or better for our bodies and less chemicals. But it wasn't until 2012 when I really had a big awakening that there was a pathway that could actually reverse climate change and global warming, that we could actually draw down enough carbon out of the atmosphere through agriculture, through the way that human beings interact with land, such that there was actually a real mechanism, there was a real pathway of how we could have generations to come on this planet where life could actually be more abundant, more fecund, and to just see that opening, to see that path, to see that there was a way forward was so remarkable. It's like, a moment of the world goes from being flat to the world being round, and it's like what that makes possible. And that there's a circulation and a cycle that actually could cycle the clocks back and the damage done, and that we could actually heal and at a global scale, mend much of the damage that we've done as human beings, impacting our natural world, our climate, our oceans, our forests, our soils, our water. And so regenerative agriculture is essentially a philosophy or a practice of land management where it's not about doing less harm or sustaining the resources that we have left. It's actually about how do we think and act and be in relationship with nature in a way where year after year there's more fertility in our soil, there's more water holding capacity, there's more infiltration, there's more biodiversity, that the way humans can interact with nature and land can be productive, not just in a selfish human, beings, taking the cream off the top and depleting the soil, but actually that we can have the nutrients that we need being produced, food, fiber, and fuel, and even materials coming from the land, from the raw resources, and yet the land itself, the ecosystem where those resources came from, continue to build in fertility. Much like natural ecosystems, like a rainforest or like a productive prairie. It's feeding lots of creatures. It's feeding lots of flora and fauna. It's producing lots of output, but it also continues to thrive below ground and above ground. And how do we start to use this? There's elements of a spiritual connection, an interdependence with nature, that has been lived and spoken about and philosophized and embodied through indigenous cultures, place-based knowledge, ecologically place-based knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge, and then that wisdom coming into this moment of a contemporary agricultural system which is super destructive. And there's been pioneers of ranchers and farmers and agroforestry experts and scientists that are validating this ancient and spiritual and philosophy that's come from the ancients to this current moment, that can be validated and measured and expanded to our current agricultural paradigm, which my shirt says degenerative is like what right now our current relationship to land and how we do agriculture. The expectation and the mindset is explicitly that land gets degraded under human management. So that is the paradigm of thinking and acting that is currently in agriculture in most cases. And then there's this idea of sustainability, which is like doing less harm and sustaining, but ultimately there's no opportunity for regeneration in sustainability. So we oftentimes say sustainability is ahead of its time. If an ecosystem is thriving, let's sustain that. But if an ecosystem is broken, sustainability doesn't actually have the insight, the direction, the narrative, the tools to get us to the place that we want to get to, which is regeneration, because we've had so many of our ecosystems, forests, grasslands, watersheds, all these different areas that have been depleted. We need a new North Star of understanding that regeneration is possible. Human beings can participate and catalyze it, and let's design an agricultural system that is aiming towards that. And that's where we are. That's what's exciting, and that's what the film, as you spoke about, really. I had this insight 8 years ago of like, how can we get this message out to the masses? And the film really was that message that I experienced intimately and personally as an expression that, millions of others could have that same awakening that I had, and that was the dream that was
Beautiful.
that's coming true in this moment.
Okay, good. Beautiful. And we'll come to the film, and I think what you just gave us is some good kind of understanding of what the problem is, and I think that's a great distinction that you made between sustainability and regeneration. It doesn't make sense to sustain something that's broken. It's not going to make it any better. My next question, though, is it seems counterintuitive from a scalability perspective that small farming can feed 8 billion, let alone 10 billion people. And you talked about, the way it used to be done, indigenous people and whatnot. So how realistic is it that we can feed the world in a regenerative way? And how do we move away from the massive money machine that is big ag?
Yeah, so I think one thing to say is that I think the statistic is that 70 to 80% of the world population is being sustained and fed from what some call the peasant food web, or small scale subsistence farming, and so that is the current reality. Yes, big ag feeds huge amounts of the more developed countries. Big ag is the majority of the acres, and the majority of food is mostly geared towards corn, soy, alfalfa, wheat, not as much in this country, but rice, and really that the majority of the acreage, corn and soy in this country, isn't really turning into valuable or healthy human calories. It's mostly turned into
Food.
Oils,
Feed.
yes, animal feed, feeding livestock ingredients that really they're not designed to eat, which
Correct.
there's a whole sort of narrative or story around that. But so again, the opportunity of making our food system, first of all, we throw away 40% of all food grown. So it's not it's not that we don't have enough food. We've optimized and made efficient and scaled things up that's no longer human scale, and it ultimately leads to farmers needing to get big or get out. They and this is especially in this country, that they're growing in acreage. They're more mechanized. They're more dependent on chemical inputs, and their economics is actually not that healthy for the most part. I think the statistic is 90% of all American farmers are depending on an off-farm income. So 90% of all farmers in America, and the top 10% are making a lot of money, and they are, but the majority of family farmers in this country are dependent on a off-farm income. And so, the opportunity really is that no matter, even with all the subsidies, all the chemicals, all the mechanization, it's still not a good situation. It's still not productive and healthy for farmers, for our land, for our water, for the people eating those nutrients that are coming out of those big ag systems. So we need a big agricultural reform, and the regenerative agriculture sort of narrative and opportunity and sort of exploration and opening is really painting a context in which creativity, human ingenuity, and innovation can go from the current paradigm to something else. And that's ultimately what we're hoping for, again, I always like to say, I am not a farmer. I've dabbled with gardening and, homesteading and composting, and that's my wife. Thank you, babe. But I've essentially been a cheerleader for the champion people who are really doing the work on the ground. And that's really Kiss the Ground's whole purpose and premise, is to awaken people to the possibilities of regeneration. So how can we use our voice, our storytelling ability, our ability to create content, our ability to gather, thought leadership and have them adopt a message and catalyze that message. So that's really what the film has been, one expression of that. Our organization has been an expression of that for the last 8 years, trying all different approaches of how can we awaken this message of regenerative agriculture to the masses, so that the conditions, the environment is such that the consumer, or the one who's demanding food, the business that wants to be relevant in the face of the consumer, the policymaker who wants to be relevant in front of his constituent, the influencer who wants to be a part of something that's meaningful and valuable. How do we move all of them and awaken their consciousness in this direction, so that we can have this environment that the latent seed beds, the latent seed banks of consciousness of, like, yes, this is intuitive, this is real, this is possible, we want this, we demand this, and the world starts to transform in the awareness of the possibility.
Beautiful. And it seems like there's an evolution of that consciousness that's occurring now, especially around the way people eat. I've been saying for years that the best thing that a person can do individually to help the planet and their own personal health is to take on a plant-based diet. What's your take on this, and how do we, I think I know your take on that. So the bigger question is, how do we promote eating more plants and less meat without shaming people and making them wrong?
Well, I mean, my take is definitely kind of different than most because I've been a vegan or vegetarian my whole life, and I actually transitioned away from veganism, vegetarianism, 6 years ago, when I really started to see my dad starting to farm an organic 17-acre farm, and how he was going to produce soil fertility was the need for animals. And if the business is a farm and the farm is a business, everything has to bring something to the table, bring something to the bottom line, to care for animals just for their, their impact, their positive impact on land, doesn't make sense inside of the economic model of a farm, because it's already hard enough to make money as a farmer. So, we realized, oh, wow, how do we grow organic vegetables? Well, they oftentimes depend on the inputs of, animals, and that those animals are, in a system of living and dying. And part of that, then tends to be the nutrient fertility that's being inputted on organic farms that, create vegetables for vegans. And so, again, very nuanced, complex, not easy to, understand at a like a high headline level. But, really, I've always been under the kind of the advocacy of, yes, in the current context of eating meat from concentrated animal feedlot operations, CAFOs, that are being fed the majority of our antibiotics that are produced, on the planet, that are living in their own feces, that are being, slaughtered at a speed and just an unfathomable machine-like mechanistic way. That is, that is desecration. That is, that is karma that human beings are going to have to pay for how we, treated animals. And so, to be a vegan, to say no to that is beautiful, righteous, amazing, and awesome. And, there's in a lot of cases, there's the inefficiency and the energy and the waste that system creates, that if we want to be, ecologically minded and thinking about our footprint, yes, there's also this, I don't want to participate in that system of degradation. And, a big part of it is that a lot of agricultural land or land, it shouldn't be in crops. It actually should be perennial grasses and, wild prairie. And so that land will need animals on it. And, at this point, that land isn't prairie that can just be opened up and can have a free, grazing 60 billion bison, which used to be on the plains, that, makes their drove around the country. It's going to need to be more managed, plot by plot, because that's how the world is broken up at this point into ownership and land. So animals and ruminants and cows and bison and elk and deer and sheep and, all livestock play a role in creating healthy ecosystems. And so, the kind of big headline is, we want to eat a diverse plate of whole foods and with a large majority of plants on that plate. Because if we're eating a diverse amount of plants on our plate, that means we're supporting a diverse amount of plants being grown on the land versus a monoculture. And, animals are going to be instrumental in creating healthy agricultural systems that are human scale or are regionally scaled, that can produce, healthy food for healthy landscapes. Animals are going to be a part of that. I think it's clear from all the expertise in the field that animals are an essential piece of the regeneration of soil and prairies and grasslands. And so if that's going to happen, that will be managed and will be a system of animal agriculture. And hopefully that system can be done in a way where there's more mindfulness because there's obviously mindfulness of how to regenerate soil and managing animals, adaptively on land such that it mimics nature, but also there can be mindfulness of how those animals are being, killed and processed, and the quality of that food ultimately leads to, the human health component, which again, I believe that at one time I was like, meat is bad. And I don't believe that. I believe that, some, in reasonable and small portions, healthy pasture-raised animals can be a healthy way to, get nourishment. And
okay. So that was a shift, definitely a shift from the way you were brought up, I would imagine, in a family of, hardcore vegan restaurants. That was definitely a shift for you over the years. Yeah.
I was vegan for 40 years. I was vegetarian for 35 years. And, again, this has been a learning journey and an exploration. And, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And hopefully you continue to learn and refine and understand your understanding. But where I am on my journey now, the idea of just the message of plant-based diet is the truth, the way, the answer. I don't see that, and especially when there's a co-opting of the plant-based narrative, which is, encouraging things like glyphosate-ridden, Impossible Burgers or Beyond Burgers that are using, pea protein or soy protein, which, is coming from a monoculture and, coming with a lot of processed, non-food substances, as well as a lot of contamination from, farming systems that are dependent on, chemicals and fertilizers that ultimately, directly impact our health. And so the idea that just like the plant-based narrative is, it's kind of, we see this in all areas of life right now within social media. There's like the headline creates the narrative, but there's so many nuances that aren't oftentimes uninvestigated, which lead people to kind of swinging in polarities way in left or right, when actually when you dig into the details, things usually come more towards the middle.
Interesting. So yeah, it sounds like the timing is interesting, because I think you started Kiss the Ground 6 years ago, right? In 2015, around the same time that you made this transition in the way you ate. And I believe so for people I don't know, you co-founded Kiss the Ground with Finian Makepeace and Lauren Tucker. And the first short video that you released was called The Soil Story. And in it, you talk about how the release of extreme amounts of carbon led to ocean acidification and mass extinction of marine species. I'm curious how that first video was received, and especially based on what you just said over the last few minutes, was this concept of regenerative ag, was that a fringe concept only 6 years ago? I mean, clearly it's still evolving for you of what it actually is.
Yeah. I think there was somebody who can't remember who did this, some kind of journal story mapping of regenerative agriculture. And I think in 2013, there was only, and this may just be nationally, but I think there was only, 2 or 3 organizations that were using that term and kind of explicitly communicating the opportunity, urgency, and methodology or philosophy of regenerative agriculture. And, I think we were one of the 3 that was doing that back in, I think it was 2013, when we founded Kiss the Ground, after my trip to New Zealand in 2012. So yeah, I mean, it definitely has been, there's been a explosion of, there's been an explosion with that term, the concept of regenerative agriculture. It's become quite the buzzword. At the time when we put out The Soil Story in 2014, we actually used the word regenerative agriculture and carbon farming because we didn't know what was going to be the direction. Those were kind of 2 terms that were being played with as what was going to be the terminology that would be adopted by the movement and by the world as, the thing that was representing this ideal and this potential. And yeah, the Soil Story was received, powerfully. It was used all over the world as a communication tool for, what was at the time mostly locked up in, academic white papers, indigenous philosophy and kind of principles of, nature and humans and animals and soil and water all being this interconnected web of life. There was clearly some pioneering, farmers. I mean, like the godfather of biodynamics, Rudolf Steiner, he was understanding the interconnection of the physical farm as well as the metaphysical, layers of life. And, could we farm understanding that interconnection and that interplay of all those. So there's definitely been people that have used different words to describe this idea of regenerative agriculture. It's really the current incarnation and articulation, specifically and explicitly in this moment where people are clear that sustaining or conserving won't be enough. We need to heal, restore, and regenerate. Right. So it really just speaks to this urgency of where we are as a human species and, what are the actions and the direction that we need to go to, to have a livable planet for our, our children and our children's children. There was an IPC report that just came out in the last week, really communicating the urgency that, we need clear, real, fast action, that there is no more wishful thinking about, is this happening?
That's right.
Is this real?
Yeah.
And so it kissed the ground. That the film, we released the film in 2014. We connected it to Governor Brown's Healthy Soils Initiative. We garnered 23,000 signatures, and we got some, different influencers and celebrities to kind of put it out to their networks, and it, it became an internationally used piece of media to communicate the potential of regenerative agriculture. Now it's been translated into, I think, 9 languages, and it really was. Yeah, it was an early calling card for those that were doing this work who didn't have the time or ability to, communicate it in a good way. It was a thing like, this is what I've been talking about. This is what, my company, or this is what our initiative, or this is what this white paper, or this is what this policy wanting to represent, or, this is what I want to communicate in my classroom to children to have them understand this. So, it was a powerful kind of, one of the early pieces of media that really splashed this idea and was used to communicate, in lots of different settings all around the world.
Got it. So that was kind of your coming out, and then you were able to build momentum over the last several years. And in 2020, along with Joshua and Rebecca Tickell and a revolutionary group of activists, including the narrator of the movie, Woody Harrelson, scientists, farmers, politicians, that's the feature-length documentary, Kiss the Ground, which makes the case that regenerative agriculture can balance the climate, replenish our water supply, and feed the whole world. Tell us, well, I'll start with this. I was able to watch the documentary before it was released, and then right after the whole planet went into lockdown. So first of all, congratulations on the movie itself. The movie is excellent. I know the film was many years in the making, and obviously the lockdown impacted your ability to get it out there and feature it in film festivals and things like that. But thanks to Netflix, you got great traction and millions of people have seen the movie. First off, what was it like releasing a film during a global pandemic? That must have been very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the blessing, the challenge was, kind of, we had gotten into Tribeca Film Festival. That was like our big, breakout moment. And then that totally got canned, no pun intended. That, basically that, that was not happening. The opportunity was like, yeah, we have been trying to put this film out for years, probably 3 years. I think we had put it up at Tribeca twice, got denied twice. We had been, iterating over different cuts, and the moment of putting it out during a global pandemic was one. Obviously it was challenging because usually, films like this that have grassroots kind of movements, it's all about how many screenings you can do. So you set up screenings, but, ultimately there wasn't screenings happening. Originally we were going to do this whole launch where the film was going to come out as, we're going to do a film on farm campaign where we're basically hosting screenings of the film on farms. And with the pandemic, that became logistically too difficult and impossible. Even though we pulled off a few physical events, most of all the events, happened online, as everything else was in the world. And the opportunity was the fact that it came out on Netflix was people were at home, bored, a lot of people not working. And a lot of people afraid, and a lot of people experiencing total anxiety, fear, depression around, the future of life on Earth. And, so to have a glimmer of a hopeful message, a message that really was speaking from possibility, speaking from there is a way, and that way is not only good for, the human immune system, human resilience, human health, but also, farmer health, water, clean air, that there was a way, with climate change that we actually could, there was a glimmer of possibility. There was especially for young people who are they're receiving the baton from this, the older generations, and they don't see, it's like, what does the future really hold for us? And, with the regenerative narrative and regenerative possibility, it really gives hope for entrepreneurship, for, activism, for, policy reform, for, creativity, for art. It's like, wow, there's this world of regeneration that, we can really be exuding and being. And, as the generation coming on, we always had this vision and this idea that regeneration could be the generation that adopted the principles and understanding that human beings could be a beneficial presence on this planet. We don't have to be a cancer or a locust or a virus, a destructive virus, that we actually could be a good bacteria that helps, improve all of life in an ecosystem, as, we know that a healthy gut microbiome, does for our whole system, and how much the gut microbiome actually impacts every aspect of our health in our body, that human beings could actually be that healthy microbiome on the planet and catalyze, this trophic cascade of greater life potential, greater biodiversity potential through our understanding and our actions. And so to just create that context that then the world gets to use, human ingenuity, inventiveness, to start creating, is a pretty exciting candle to light and to open, box to open.
I like that. The regeneration generation. That's powerful. I feel like most documentary films struggle with two main issues. First is you have a passionate filmmaker or filmmakers who work tirelessly to make a meaningful film, and they spend a fortune in the process, and then they struggle to get eyeballs on it. And the second thing is many documentaries focus so much on the problem and offer very little in terms of solutions, therefore leaving the audience frustrated, not hopeful, like you just mentioned. And honestly, this was my experience with movies like The Inconvenient Truth, but then Al Gore created the Climate Reality Workshop. And so to me, the beauty of Kiss the Ground is you were very successful in getting major distribution, even in the face of 2020. Plus, you created powerful ways for people to get engaged and take meaningful action through educational programs that you created. And I definitely want to spend some time on these, because I think this to me it's like, hey, let's get the message out on the power of regenerative ag, but then what can people do to take action? So first thing you have is soil advocacy training, which is a 6-week course where you teach people to become spokespeople for soil regeneration. Tell us about the purpose of this, and also how many people have now gone through that training.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Yeah, so again, as we said earlier, or as I said earlier, we were unlikely characters to be part of this movement, because we weren't farmers, we weren't scientists, we weren't academics, we weren't, advising brands on agricultural practice. Like, we just didn't really have a place. But what we created was, let's be advocates. Let's advocate and educate around this thing that was so inspiring and altered our lives and gave us hope. How can we give that which is so meaningful and awakening to us away to others. I think everyone gets that. You see a great movie, you see a great meal, or you have a great meal, you see an amazing performer, and you want others to have that. And so we wanted others to be sparked and ignited around how they could be powerful and influential and transformative through advocacy. And so we just thought, how do we duplicate ourselves? How do we duplicate, we see that we're able to just, talk to people and have them get it, and ultimately leads to businesses changing, local, policy measures changing, doctors writing new books, brands creating new initiatives. We saw that advocacy has this powerful ripple effect. And so we thought, all right, let's create a program that, and Finian Makepeace, my co-founder, one of my co-founders, really, he's our lead educator and the teacher for the soil advocacy training. And, it started off very grassroots, kind of just sort of having people in person, 6 or 12 people. And then we looked at, doing it online. And then now the format is we've created kind of a very high-end masterclass style course that is done at self-pacing, or you can do it with a live cohort so you can experience community and, like minds and energies, taking on this process together. And then you can ultimately tune in and connect to that network. And then we have a program or a platform called Mighty Networks that we use to where we connect all these advocates so that they can continue to self-generate ideation and sharing around what kind of projects they can catalyze and build through their inspiration and education. Nice. So 3,000 people in 25 countries have taken the course. Our plan is to do a cohort every quarter starting next year. We have a goal. The cohorts have been from 350 people to 50 to 75 people at a time going through the cohort. That is co-led by Finian and Don Smith, who is another part of the Kiss the Ground, another member of the Kiss the Ground team. And it's been exciting to see artists that now their whole artwork is about creating messages of regeneration. Farmers giving TED Talks about their transition and how to communicate and why this is so important. We had a gentleman in Canada help push forward some legislation that opened $300 million of funding to the regenerative ag space in Canada because of his ability to advocate, communicate, and obviously, he had some experience in that world before, but the soil advocacy training really aided in his, confidence and articulation that drove that initiative home. So
that's incredible. So 3,000 people have gone through just the soil advocacy training itself. That's really impressive, because that's only been around how long? A couple of years, if that?
Yeah. So we've had the course in sort of beta phases previous to last September, but the most recent iteration. So we've been doing it about 2.5, 3 years. But the current iteration and quality of production, the soil advocacy training, we launched with the film last September. So a year ago. So it's exciting. And again, all different, people from all different industries, and kind of parts of society are participating, because it really it's like, in the realm of activism is a pretty thankless and difficult on our minds and our hearts and our bodies, because you're oftentimes just fighting against something that feels unwinnable. Right. The regenerative movement really has an air and a a possibility of something that we're standing for, that we're seeing could be the future of how we produce our food and our fiber and our fuel, and that possibility, breathes transformation into, all different sectors of society. And so it's exciting to be able to give people that as the mission versus just,
totally.
And again, there's absolute need for all different kinds of activism, people who are, fighting against and saying, no, this must stop, much respect and honor to that, segment. And, there's a wing of a butterfly that shows, different ways that we can, kind of transform a system. And, there's reform, there's resist, there's rebuild, and there's heal. And I believe those are the four. But, we definitely are in the healing and reforming, and really showing a possibility, kind of in the spirit of Buckminster Fuller, creating a vision that makes the old one obsolete.
That works for all of humanity too, which is the key to that. Very good. So that's amazing. That's such a great example. For anyone that hasn't seen the film, go watch the film, because it definitely offers hope. Hope is one thing, but then for people that want to go to that next step, that training's great. And the next training I want to talk about is your farmland training. So let's talk about the farmers. You mentioned,
just because we've launched two other courses since the soil advocacy training, which is a regenerative gardening course for beginners and a regenerative gardening for advanced students. So if you like kind of advocacy, education, activism, and that's kind of your bag, then that's for you. But if you're more just like, hey, I want to take these principles and practices and bring them to my backyard, or my side yard, or my windowsill, that course is available for you. And these courses do, part of the way that we as a nonprofit support ourselves is we sell these courses, but we also have a very robust scholarship program for, many different communities, and communities that oftentimes, can't get access to things, whether it's veterans, BIPOC, LGBTQ, developing countries. We have scholarships for, to give people access if the cost of the course is the barrier.
Gotcha. Cool. You want to spend a couple of minutes on the farmers themselves?
The farmland program, we launched 3 years ago, really under the leadership of Lauren Tucker, our third co-founder, who was really like, hey, how do we as an organization ground this work, advocacy work, with people that are really doing the on-the-ground transformation. And then we were also, part of it was guided by, we had farmers coming to us and saying, your stories, your content is, kind of, it's talking a good game, but how do we go in this direction? What resources do you have for us? And so, even though we didn't have any expertise in that area, we were more just, kind of championing the philosophy and ideology and science and education that we had gleaned. We thought, all right, well, how could we jump into this? And so we basically partnered with three of who we see as some of the best educators, technical training educators for regenerative agriculture, the Darren Doherty and the Agrarians Institute, the Alan Savory and the Savory Institute, and Soil Health Academy. And essentially, our program was designed to provide education for farmers who wanted to transition. Money and was a barrier for getting access to that education. So providing scholarships to those courses, to those expert groups who are actually training farmers in the technical transition and how to do that. And then the first iteration of the program was to offer sort of mentor support over a 3-year period and soil testing over that 3-year period, to support the success of that transition. And there's 38 farmers in that program, about 30,000 acres in that program. And this year we've shifted the program a little bit to where now we're providing the educational resources and courses to farmers that want to make the transition and take that step in educational and technical training and technical support. And then to those that come through that educational training, they can apply for what we're calling a regenerative community grant program, where you can apply for a micro grant to improve your infrastructure so that you can move to a more diversified, regenerative, soil-centered agricultural system that oftentimes requires new infrastructure and new equipment. And so applying and providing those micro grants to farmers who are wanting access to make that transition, needing that infrastructure, and not only just needing that infrastructure that impacts one farm, but how are they, using that infrastructure to improve a whole community. That's why it's called regenerative community, regenerative community grants. So
Gotcha.
we just released our first grant for a grazing equipment, fencing equipment for a project here in Northern California around expanding a livestock herd of sheep on grassland to not only improve the health of the land, but also with fire mitigation.
Very important right now. I read recently that farmers have the #1 suicide rate of all professions. Is that correct, and why is this so?
I believe that is true. That out of all professions, it is the highest rate of suicide, and that does, is international as well as, I don't know if it's #1 international and national, but I know that I believe that statistic is national. Is it a national statistic, U.S.-based statistic?
Okay.
But I believe that what it is about is that essentially the current agricultural system it's a lineage. You're receiving handing down the farm, and so there's a lot of pressure in not messing it up because it's a family lineage. And there's basically the current paradigm of agriculture is that the land is becoming eroded and degraded over time, and is requiring more inputs, more equipment for less output or less economic substance.
Profit.
And so as farmers are struggling, and they're struggling with losing the family legacy, that's a lot of pressure, which leads to people. And again, this is somewhat of my an educated assessment. This is my understanding. There's probably many other factors, but I know that is a big factor.
Gotcha. So you have soil advocacy, you get the farmland training, gardening that you mentioned. There's all these options, and there's other things we don't even have time to talk about. For people that are listening, people that watch the movie, they're inspired, where's the best place for people who are interested to start?
The best place for people to start is, one of the things that Kiss the Ground is really focused on is how do we be a resource center, an online resource center for anyone who wants to get involved in the regenerative movement. So if you've been inspired, if you see the film, you're like, wow, this is the movement that I want to be involved in. Kiss the Ground is the top of the funnel to point you in so many directions, partner organizations, resources, books, classes, individuals, initiatives, policy, how do you do something, it really is, how do we just start purchasing in a way that helps the regenerative movement? We've created a purchasing guide We collaborated with Regeneration International, and there's a regenerative farming map system that you can find the closest regenerative farm to you. Really what I recommend is, watch the movie, become a member of Kiss the Ground's community. So join our membership program, which you can give as, $5 a month, and you become part of the regenerative movement and kind of connected to all that's happening in the movement. And then, take the soil advocacy training, take one of the gardening courses, and really see, what inspires you. If that feels like too much and you just want to take it into your kitchen, and start, having foods that are supporting regenerative agriculture, download our purchasing guide, and really start becoming connected to where your food comes from. I think I said this before, but what we put on our plates is what we are creating as the future of our planet. Our plate is our planet, and what we put on our plate is what will be the face of the planet ongoingly. If we put foods that are destructive for our human health and for our earth on our plate, ultimately that's the future of our planet. But if we're putting foods that are healthy, organic, biodynamic, regenerative, pasture raised, really start being closely connected to where your food's coming from. Start asking more questions. Go to your farmer's market, find out what farmers are doing to take care of their soil. How are they rebuilding their soil? And find the farmer that's like the rock star in your local region, and have them be a rock star. Have them be known. Amplify them on social media. Amplify them in your, at your dinner party. Amplify them by, engaging your friends to understand the importance of supporting these people. Buy a local CSA box from a regenerative organic farm. So that's really, Kiss the Ground, the portal, our website, all the resources, all the classes, education, come there. Follow us on, Instagram is probably the main place that we're sharing. Watch the film, and, start having your food matter. It matters. It's never been more important to have healthy food on your plate, in the middle of a pandemic, when, the number one thing that's unmesswithable is that if we're a compromised immune system, we are at risk, we're vulnerable, not only, to carry and but to, to be sick and to be harmed and injured. And so really, it is all about our human health, our resilience. And, the reality is that there's millions and millions of people that die. I'm reading this book, The Food Fix by Mark Hyman, and millions of people are dying every year because of the food choices that they're eating. And, there is a big information gap. There's a big education gap for us to really understand the importance of that. But if there's one thing that we come away with, our food choices, really do explicitly shape our human health condition, but now we're understanding more and more that regenerative organic foods can actually be the thing that can not only just be helpful for our own health, but the pathway that can restore our ecosystems and our planet.
And amen to that. And that's to me what's so exciting about this whole movement that you guys are spearheading. It's not just what we eat is going to impact our immune system and our own personal health, but by improving our own personal health, we're also improving the health of the soil and the planet. So it is the ultimate win-win. So watch the film. We will share the links to everything that you talked about. And in closing, I just want to bring this full circle. I wanted to really focus on all things Kiss the Ground. We didn't spend a lot of time on your upbringing and your family and Cafe Gratitude, but for anyone that doesn't know or does know a little bit about your family, you were raised on these principles of gratitude and unconditional love. The epiphany that you had in New Zealand was basically that your dharma is to be a protector of Mother Earth. And as we're saying, you realize how we treat ourselves is synonymous with how we treat the planet. and you're all about building community and connecting to the spirit of love and taking action guided by that spirit. So when it comes to what it's going to take for humans to live in harmony with themselves, each other, and the planet, what's the final thought you want to share? What's the main lesson that you've learned that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we're not gonna figure it out from our mind. We're gonna figure it out from our heart. And yeah, I think where I've spent a lot of my time and practice of how to live a heart-centered life, and to, as my only tattoos say, be love. Yeah, that really. Yeah, we're going to need to be adaptable. And there's no roadmap for all that we're facing, but I do know that living more from our hearts, living more from a place of love, and that a way to get to that love is through gratitude, and being grateful and noticing the things that have become we've been blind to. Gratitude is really making the invisible visible, bringing that which right now is a complete blessing that we've taken for granted. When we can take that for granted and reemerge it to the present moment to be something that we're grateful for, we experience this fullness, we experience this sort of well of love in our hearts. And from that place, we make better decisions. We, live our lives more based on, kindness, compassion, and understanding, and a desire, curiosity. And so, yeah, I would say that, yeah, may we remember to live from our hearts. May we remember to be grateful every day for all that we have, and may that inform our actions and our legacies and our what we create with our lives. And that's what I try to be informed by and guided by. And someone said this to me earlier today, which is just may we continuously be asking for help, because that leaves us in a submission of humility, of like that we don't know, and what we know now we'll know that wasn't the whole truth in 10 minutes. And so may we continue to ask for help, from our internal guidance and from external guidance, and allow that to guide our steps forward. And the thing I just wanted to, and again, maybe this is we can choose to keep this or not, but I'm excited that Kiss the Ground is hosting a big event in Laguna Beach, November 14th. And it's I don't want to bring the cat out of the bag, but we're going to bring an amazing musical performance of an artist that people love, and it's going to be a fundraiser event for Kiss the Ground and our initiative to reform the 2023 Farm Bill, and supporting all of our programmatic work that we've spoken about. And so we're going to do an event November 14th at the what's the Performing Arts Center in Laguna? The Festival of the Arts. Festival of the Arts, and apparently they haven't had a concert there since Kenny Loggins. Kenny Loggins. It's been a while. And so we're excited to bring some energy and really bring an epic Laguna Beach gathering together around regeneration, community, healing, and music and love.
Well, I appreciate that. I have a very good idea who the artist might be, but I will leave that under wraps since you didn't mention the name. And yeah, man, I think you said it perfectly. It's about love. It's about gratitude, asking for help. I love that. The humility aspect, and healing ourselves and healing the planet. So on that note, Ryland, I love you. You're amazing. Watch the film, everybody. Go to the website. Get involved if you are so inclined. And this food revolution that you guys are leading the charge on is obviously critical to the big picture, and it's important. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. So this is a very important aspect of the whole equation, I feel, of what needs to be done to heal the planet and create a healthy ocean, a healthy world for all of us to live in. Ryland, love you, brother. I'll see you real soon. That's our show, everybody.